And good afternoon, everyone. And we shall begin the afternoon session. The first session this afternoon, session 7, is on research methods for interfaith studies. Our speaker is an associate professor and chairperson of the Department of Theology and Religious Education of De La Salle University. She holds a degree in education from De La Salle University. So without much further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Fides A. del Castillo. Good afternoon, Dr. Fides.
Good afternoon, Dr. Fernie, and good afternoon to everyone. So let me first share my screen. Thank you, Dr. Fernie, and I'm really happy to be here. Okay. So again, good afternoon to everyone. And first, allow me to thank Search and MSU for inviting me in this webinar. It's lovely to meet all of you in today's session, and my talk is about research methods for interfaith studies. I hope to share with you what interfaith studies are and the latest study that we conducted this year. But before I proceed, let me first ask all of you. I will be requesting your active participation by typing in the chat box your thoughts and ideas. When you hear the word interfaith, so what do you think is interfaith? What do we mean by interfaith studies? And why are interfaith studies critical in our time now? So you may answer any of these questions, type it in the chat box, and the first person who will type his or her answer in the chat box will get a prize from Search. No, just kidding aside, I will contact you personally, so let me see what, okay. So we have from Ma'am Ruby, so we have different religions coming together. Thank you, Ma'am Ruby. Please email me at fides.delcastillo@dlsu.edu.ph. Okay, I have something for you. And then we also have from Sir Glenn, interfaith is essential for progressive society. Okay, thank you. Ma'am Jane, it is necessary because we are in multi-region country or religion. Okay, so thank you so much for that participation. Now, allow me to share with you the different parts that I'll be sharing with you this afternoon. Okay, so for my session this afternoon, I have prepared three main parts. So in the first part, we will identify what interfaith is and the other terminologies that revolve around the word interfaith. And then in the second part, I will discuss the different research methodologies that we can use in interfaith studies. And lastly, I will share our recent publication on the centrality of religiosity for the interfaith group. So these are the 3 points that we will be looking at. So let me begin. What is interfaith? So some of you have pointed in the chat box. No, you have identified what is interfaith for you. So the first point that we have to demystify is the word interfaith. Why are we studying this? Why are we talking about this? We all know that Muslims, Christians, and other faith religions or faith groups have lived side by ages. What is shared between the different faith groups lies in something central to each one of them. So these are the ideas of our love for God, our love for neighbor. These common religious values are the basis of interfaith dialogue between members of different faith beliefs. And if we know that we have similarities amidst our differences, we will be able to connect and relate with each other. So that's why interfaith studies matter as we continue to live side by side with our brethren from other faith traditions. Now, let us identify what do we mean by interfaith. So when we focus on population alone, and when we combine the number of Muslims and Christians, it can actually make up about half of the world's population. So that's how big our population is. And that's why peaceful relations between Muslims and Christians here in the Philippines, or even in the other with other religions, it stands as one of the central goals to achieve peaceful coexistence in our communities, especially in our country. And so if we talk about interfaith, It defines the people or groups of different religious backgrounds and views coming together. They unite as one, even coming from other faith beliefs. And it is the essence of believing in a higher being. Well, we call it God, Allah, Jesus, okay? And we are all interconnected. And in the eyes of a higher being or of God, no, or Bathala, we are all but brothers and sisters. So I think that is the essence of this. Now, let's try to look at the different forms of interfaith. So in line with interfaith studies, we also have to break it down into smaller groups. So let's try to identify some of the forms of interfaith activities. We have interfaith dialogue, interfaith-based action, and interfaith-based outreach. So these are concrete ways by which we see what does interfaith means when we are in the community. So let's first identify what interfaith dialogue is. So this is the first form of interfaith. No? The term interfaith dialogue does not only refer to the dialogue between two faith traditions. It goes beyond having a positive interaction and relationship with certain backgrounds and traditions. It refers to cooperation, constructive and positive interchange in both the individual and institutional level. I think you have seen the news last March. We have witnessed Pope Francis' visit to Iraq. To many people, it allowed them to have an increased awareness of religious pluralism and a greater understanding and cooperation among people. This is a good example of interfaith dialogue between Catholic and Muslim leaders. And it's a great attempt to develop mutual understanding and recognition of the shared values and interests. And I think this is a very, very significant initiative, of both tradition. Now, let's move to the next one, which is interfaith action. So if we talk about interfaith-based action, it refers to two or more groups of different faith traditions cooperating to advocate for peace building. One example of this cooperation is the World Council of Churches. They are very active, especially in the US and in Europe. They have been very active in accomplishing advocacy, not only for peace building, but also in understanding the different faith traditions of their counterparts without losing, of course, their own identity. We also have different organizations like the Interfaith Encounter Association, the Religions for Peace. These are actually big organizations that encourage dialogue and cooperation to attain peace and collaboration. Maybe in one of the activities that MSU and DLSU, through search, can plan in the coming days or maybe weeks, would be an interfaith-based action where our institutions can create more opportunities and initiatives for advocacies to help one another in promoting peace and collaboration so that partnership could be strengthened. And I look forward to these initiatives for future collaboration. Now, let's move to the next one. This is interfaith-based research. So here, it is where people of diverse faith teach others about their own religious beliefs. So it is where members of various faith traditions would share their own beliefs so that their brethren, their brothers and sisters, can understand them better. It is not actually proselytizing, but rather educating others on their own beliefs, their own religion. This might be controversial for some because there are close-minded people, but many of those who do interfaith-based outreach benefits from these activities. People who listen to other faith beliefs become more accepting of their neighbors. Their minds are open to knowing the people in their community without judging them. I remember few years ago, we provided an opportunity for higher education faculty from different faith beliefs. This is to learn from one another. And we have participants from Independiente Church Aglipayan. We also have participants from mga Buddhist, Islam, Christian, and so on. So we visited their churches, the temples, and the mosque. At first, when we enter the temple or the mosque, we feel that we are an outsider and we do not belong, no, in that community. But when our counterpart, our partner, a Buddhist, and the Muslim brothers and sisters started sharing their own beliefs and traditions and allow us to explore and venerate their sacred spaces of worship, little by little, we feel accepted. We feel felt that ease, no, that openness as we learn from each other. And I think these are possible activities that, again, we can do once the pandemic is over. We get the chance to see each other with deep trust and openness. So there are a lot of opportunities that we can actually do and explore, no? Maybe after this webinar. Now, let me continue. So why are interfaith studies relevant? First, it's relevant for us to understand each individual and the values that we all share. We all live in the same planet, and in one way or another, we will all meet in the spaces that we traverse. Another reason why interfaith studies are relevant, it is the fact that we are diverse. Even in our own homes, we have different personalities and temperaments, right? So sometimes we encounter challenges in understanding our family members. How much more with the people who are from other places, from other faith beliefs. So we have to analyze how individual group interact with each other, because every actions that we make can affect the people surrounding us. And I think lastly, religion correlates to various problems and maybe the key to numerous solutions to peace building and collaboration. One sensitive issue that I can give as an example is the conflict between Palestine and Israel. I will not go into details because, but it is an example of the problem that can arise from religion. However, with interfaith dialogue and studies, hopefully this can be prevented and addressed. And societal relationship must be studied using various approaches to attain cooperation and peace. Now, let's go to the research methods. No? So we are done identifying what interfaith is, why is it important in our time now. So let's proceed in discussing the various research methods in religion and interfaith studies. So first, in general, okay, when we do interfaith studies, we have to use more than one branch of knowledge to grasp the idea fully. It is interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. We have to use different disciplines and diverse perspectives to illustrate the topic, theme, and issue. Most of the time, we have to see the study from the point of view of an outsider so that we will be unbiased, we will be objective with the data at hand, or else there will be conflict again, right? And another one will be, okay. So another thing that we have to understand is that when we conduct interfaith studies, we have to examine the spaces between and among the data. Since it involves faith traditions and it's very sensitive, and also interaction of religions with one another, we have to be very sensitive with the nuances. And we have to look at the interactions closely and see if there are underlying conflicts, and then be able to understand and be respectful of these safe spaces. Okay. The next one is interfaith studies is self-implication. It asks the questions, how can I lead? How can I be involved? Or who am I in all of this? So in interfaith studies, each religion needs to also be researched in a separately area, since each have their own position and each have their own identity. So it is important that the researcher places him or herself in the situations of these distinct individuals to understand their condition. So this is quite challenging. Okay, and then interfaith studies, we have to note that interfaith studies is descriptive, it's prescriptive and experimental. So what do we mean by this? So it needs to involve different perspectives around the world from different theories. Okay, so all these studies and research would be carried into future generations. That is why it needs to be descriptive. It is prescriptive because knowledge from these studies shouldn't just be passed around, but also acted upon. And lastly, it should be experiential because it helps those learning this knowledge, to understand the interaction between religions. So let me just show you the specific perspective coming from a sociological point of view. So there are three distinct theories when we use sociology of religion. The first one is functional. So it says here that this theory that functions of religion in the society promotes positive change. This would help in distinguishing inequality and among religions. So conflicts that may arise from them, their functions in people's lives and more. So it's important to take note and research on this, since they would really be valuable when taking on interfaith studies. And again, we have to truly understand religion in order to unite them. The second one is conflict theory. So it states here that religion promotes social inequality and social conflict. So these perspectives would help us understand religion more, how they could cooperate and how conflict may arise between them. So it's really vital to do research on interfaith using this since theories, using these theories, it can determine the outcome of different interfaith activities and understand current situations between religions. And lastly, the symbolic interactionism. So it focuses on the ways individual practice their faith and how they interpret their religious experiences. So it would be really valuable, since customized frameworks on how to unify religion or avoid conflict and understand how people live in general when it comes to the relationship of their beliefs in their daily lives. Now, let's go to the specific methods. Okay, so these are actually, I got this from Routledge Handbook of Research Methods in Study of Religion. Now, here, first, let me share with you that this handbook is the first comprehensive survey in English of research methods in the field of religious studies. And it is designed to enable faculty and students, scholars like us, to understand the variety of research methods used in the field. I have a soft copy of the PDF copy of this. For those who are interested, you can email me, or I will email this to Dr. Fernie, and it can be given to you. So the book covers the following research methods. So we have content analysis, conversation analysis, discourse factor analysis. There is field research, and so on. Each of the methods, they have specific procedure and purpose. So what I will be sharing with you are the top 5 research methodologies or methods that are commonly used in interfaith studies. So they are content analysis. Next, I'll be sharing with you field research, hermeneutics, phenomenology, and factor analysis. And then at the latter part, I will be sharing with you our recent study that used factor analysis. Okay. So let's move to the first one. So if we talk about content analysis, okay, so it's a form of textual analysis used to describe and explain characteristics of messages embedded in text. It's a sort of review of literature, in interfaith studies. So it summarizes large quantities of information, provide valuable historical and cultural insights into a research problem. And then content analysis is conducted through a process of selecting text, unitizing message units, generating content categories, coding the text, and explaining the results. So when we use content analysis, we are utilizing, we can utilize in religious studies so that we can understand religious expressions and identities. We can also evaluate religion in media. We can also examine religion in social institution and culture. Although content analysis have several limitations, it seems well suited for religious studies since it allows researchers to move beyond manifest content to latent content. Okay, now let's proceed to the field study. So when we look at field study, this is the best approach to research about the lived reality, okay, or the performance of religion. The core method of field work is participant observation. So you have to go to the area, to the community, and observe the people. And then sometimes supported by interviews and other qualitative methods. Field work results in rich description of religious activities that is theoretically informed and contributes significantly to academic debate. So the history and recent practice of field work in religious studies, it actually provides example of neophyte and experienced researchers. So the participation, the presence, reflexibility, and dialogue are key themes in the recent discussion of field work. So it says here that field work approaches to religious people and activities include gaining rapport. So there should be relationship. We practice tradition. Sometimes the observer will be really should go in that community and practice even the tradition that they are practicing. And then they have to build and maintain empathy. So paying attention, being present in the community, recording and analyzing data, dialogue about emerging understandings, and polishing the literary and other presentations of results. These are key to the success of field work. I think some of you have done this and it's really challenging, but once you see the data, it's really nakakawala ng pagod, ika nga. Okay, next, let's go to hermeneutics. This is actually derived from the Greek word, which means to express or translate or interpret. So if we talk about hermeneutics, it says here that it is both a method and a philosophy of interpretation. So it's not limited to textual studies, and all scientific methods presuppose hermeneutics reflection. So it consists of a reading that moves back and forth between the parts and the whole of the text. So if we are talking about the Bible or the Quran, we have to look at it, and really go beyond what the scripture is telling us. And then we have to understand the whole of the text, and then also between its structure and meaning, between the reader's horizon and the horizon of the text, and between the text and its context. So we have to really look at the different areas of the whole part of the text. And these processes are different varieties, are so-called hermeneutic circle. So interpretation is seen as a never-ending process with emphasis on discourse and pluralism. So within the field of religious studies, the range of acceptable readings of a text is dependent on the text's cultural and social context. So others, they really specialize in hermeneutics kasi they have to learn different languages. They have to learn Greek, Latin, and so on. The next one is phenomenology. So we use this method in one of our research, and we looked at lungaw. This is a practice, a religious expression. But if we talk about phenomenology, this is a powerful yet underused method in the study of religion. So in part, because too many scholars misunderstand what it entails. It also said in its purest form, in its pure form, phenomenology seeks to describe in experiences, or experience as it presents life through subjective consciousness. It says here that it is thus distinct from and conceptually prior to a subject's interpretations of that experience through though experiences and interpretation inevitably collide. Conscious bracketing allows at least a partial separation, which lets experience near descriptions of religious phenomena emerge. So if we will be using phenomenology, we really have to look at the different experiences of the people. So it also includes interview, being an observer of that specific phenomena, and be able to analyze the different themes in that experiences. Okay. Now, let me go to factor analysis. For factor analysis, it says here that it summarizes complex statistical relationships among variables as an aid to conceptualization. So we have to look at exploratory factor analysis, because it helps us in developing scales and subscales. So for a factor, it's important, but hidden construct that causes items can be observed to co-vary. That means if there are different factors, different constructs, we have to really discover the hidden variables in all these factors. Sometimes, most of the time, we use statistical analysis here. Okay, so when we extract factors from items, the principal axis method is most appropriate. Because it assumes the items have error. So the principal component method assumes there is little error among the item, which is usually not warranted. Again, we use statistics here. Now, in our recent study, since I am specializing in religious studies, but I have to learn more about statistical analysis. We have co-authors who have been who are specializing in that area. So later I'll be sharing that with you. So if we talk about specific research methods, of course, we have to look at the criteria of excellence. So number one, it should be reliable, it should be valid. So, and then we have to also, it should be measured, given if the research given out regarding the interfaith topic is overall successful. How are we going to know or identify whether it's successful if it actually helps the community? If you were able to bring out new knowledge, for the community, and you will be able to give something valuable so that your university or your students or your other co-faculty could use that as they hone their knowledge about that specific topic. And lastly, this will prove if the research was able to raise issues, awareness, specific findings in the topic at hand, and methods for developing that part of interfaith studies. So if people are raising questions, issues, clarifications, that means your research is successful because it can actually no, get into other people's minds and curiosity. Okay, so let me go to the third part. This is the last part of my discussion with you. And it says here that research on centrality of religiosity. So this is an interreligious form. As I've mentioned, this is a factor analysis. No, first, let me just share with you a brief description of what centrality of religiosity scale. If you have your um, Google now, you can actually type there, centrality of religiosity scale. So it's a measure of the centrality of religiosity. So its importance or salience of religious meanings and personality. So it has been developed by Dr. Stefan Huber. We were actually coordinating with him. He's from Switzerland, and it has been applied in more than 100 studies in sociology of religion, psychology of religion, and religious studies in different countries. So our study is the first one in the Philippines, and it validated hundreds of students. For CRS, or Centrality of Religiosity Scale, the largest single application is in the Global Religion Monitor with representative samples in 21 countries. So this is a big, it's a big, a huge project, and hopefully this will give meaning, or we will be able to show how young people now practice their own religiosity, whatever their religion is. So first, recognizing the religious diversity in the Philippines. So this article, it actually looked at the term religion and referred to human act that involves various beliefs and practices. So we look at the transcendent. We call him God, Allah, Hashem, higher being, or in Filipino, we call them Bathala. So this often involves the mystical or supernatural. And religions, we all know that usually have specific beliefs. We have life after death. We have morality, rules about conduct within a social group. And religion is a multidimensional construct that includes beliefs, it includes behavior, it includes rituals, ceremonies, traditions, and it may be held or practiced in private, or it can be in a public setting. But are some way it can be derived established tradition that developed over time within a community. So this study, it validated the CRS, and we tried to answer 3 questions. The first question is, what CRSI version is it valid in the Philippine context? The second is, what is the position of religious construct system among selected Filipino youth? And the third one is, how does the centrality of religion influence the selected Filipino youth subjective experience and behavior? So these are the question. And in summary, how do we measure the religious commitment of young people from different faith beliefs in the Philippines? these are the 5 factors that is embedded in the scale. No, if we talk about the intellect intellect dimension, no, from a sociological perspective, intellectual dimension refers to the social expectation that religious people have some knowledge of religion, so they can explain the view of the transcendence of religion, of religiosity. And then in the personal religious construct system, this dimension is presented as themes of interest, no? Like style of thoughts, interpretation, bodies of knowledge, and so on. So basically, in short, no, this is how you understand religion. And then when we talk about ideology, okay, so it refers to the social expectation that religious individuals have beliefs regarding the existence and the essence of a transcendent reality. We do not call that transcendent reality as Jesus or Allah, because we are trying to practice interreligious, no, interreligiosity here. So we call the higher being, because all of us, we have our own God. No? And if we talk about ideology, it is the belief on that higher being, on that transcendent reality. And when we look at the dimension of public practice, so this is, it refers to the social expectation that religious individuals belong to a religious community. So they manifest in the public participation, no? Their religious rituals, their communal activities. Like, for example, we have the Ramadan, we have the ati-atihan, we have the procession, we have the festivities. So these are public practices, okay? Or we have the sacraments, we have marriage. So these are all public practices. Now, when we look at private practice, so it refers to the religious individual devote themselves to the transcendent. So it means the individual sacred spaces. So all of us, sometimes, no, when we have our own quiet time, we have our own private, no, individual sacred spaces. And we do that through prayer, through meditation, no, through private practices. So this is another dimension. And lastly, no, we have the religious experience. So what do we mean by this? So this dimension refers to the social expectation that religious individuals have some kind of direct contact to an ultimate reality. And it affects them emotionally. So there is a certain sense of experience. No? So for example, when you pray and then you realize that God is so close to you, no? That is that religious experience. Or maybe when you attend a certain festivity, you realize that the higher being is really surrounding you, no? And it affects your emotion. It affects the way you act to people. You become a better person. So that is the religious experience. So these 5 dimensions, these are the 5 factors that is composed, that is in the interreligious centrality of religiosity scale. So we identify religiosity using these constructs. Okay. Next. Here, this is actually the different sample items that we actually use. So when we use factor analysis as a research, we usually do survey, you know, and based from the number of people, usually it would take you 100 plus people, no, to answer. No, the larger the number of participants, the higher that it would be valid and reliable. So next, I'll be showing to you, no, the result of the the study. So it says here that the religiosity profile of the participants revealed that the majority were religious. So 51% of the participants, coming from different faith beliefs, okay, more than half say that they are religious, and others were highly religious, okay, and a minority are not religious. So if we will be looking at this, the presence of different religions and the freedom of people to navigate the religious spaces show that religion in the Philippines is not monolithic entity. Although majority of Filipinos are affiliated with Catholic Church, there is a need to veer away from that generalization. So again, we conducted this to different, Filipino youths from different religious background. And the portrayal of Filipino youth who believe in a transcendent or ultimate reality can be nuanced through a measuring instrument that significantly contribute to data collection. So again, it says here that most Filipinos are religious in general. They believe in God. They practice their beliefs privately. Okay. If you notice, number one, the highest is ideology. If we will be looking at ideology again, what does it mean? So ideology, it is actually the social expectation that religious individuals has a regard. They understand, they know that a higher being is present. There is God. Okay, so most of our young people, coming from different religions, they believe that there is God. So that's something good to know, right? And then second, they are high in private practice. So this is 3.93. The mean score is that. That means even though we do not see our young people practice or participate in public festivities privately, they actually communicate with the higher being, with the transcendent. So that means they are more spiritual than religious. And then the third one is they are religious experiences. So in that sacred and individual private moments, they feel that God is present, that there is something beyond what is around them. Okay, and then the fourth one, is 3.53 as a mean score is their public practices. So that's why some adults or some faith formators or religious educator like me would actually ask, why are the young people not practicing the traditions of their own churches, of their own temples, of their own mosque? Basically because their ideology and private practices are higher than the public practices. There are a lot of reasons, okay, that can come into this, but basically they are more in terms of personal relationship, that's their preference. And lastly, the lowest mean score is the intellect factor. So that means knowledge of the scripture, knowledge of the Quran, knowledge of the tradition and the doctrine is quite low. So what is the implication of this study to our students? Maybe in our religious studies classes, maybe the more that we can explore into really teaching them what is the doctrine of our own specific religion. So these are some of the items that we can actually look at. So what are the implications of this? So number one, the presence of different religion and the freedom of people to navigate the religious space show that religion in the Philippines is, again, it's not just an entity, but rather we are all really moving. No? We are highly spiritual than religious. Okay? So as a conclusion, let me just share with you that interfaith studies, it does not need to be studied upon for those sole purpose of studying religions, but it would be really valuable to tackle when trying to understand the diversity in our community today. Second, it is important to study the causes of conflicts between encounters of two different groups in our society. It actually helps us ponder more on how we could unify these people, whether it is by similarity of values or traditions. And interfaith studies, each person, their identity, their role in the world, once researched, it may find us a better role in the world. And it says here that religion has a big impact in our world today. And when it's studied wisely, then there would be keys to world peace and the betterment of people, no matter what their belief is. So I hope you learned something from this short discussion. Again, thank you so much to Serge, to DLSU, to MSU. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Del Castillo. And now it is time for the open forum. We have a few questions in the Q&A box. And let me share the first one. This one comes from Mr. Percelindo Dingding. Have there been studies on interfaith violence, its causes, and how are these resolved by researchers and concerned parties?
There has been a lot of researches about that, no? But if we will be looking at, there are also many theories. There are so many mga, um, ad, mga solutions to the problem. The only challenge is actually if people or the communities that is involved will be practicing it. So I think that's the question, no? It will take us really a drastic, I don't know, parang changes in order for us to really resolve conflict. If only people would be more open and understanding and be more respectful of the other people's belief. So my answer to that, there are a lot of researches, a lot of solutions and theories. I think the only important thing that we have to do is how will the people be able to accept that and practice it.
The next question is from an anonymous attendee. How can religious conflict be reduced or ended? So it's a big question. In connection to the Israeli-Palestinian issue, can we still resolve that through interfaith dialogue?
Actually, this is a very sensitive issue and a big question. Again, we're talking about here not only decades of conflict, but really centuries of it came from from the Old Testament. We have to look at the Old Testament that the sacred land, the Holy Land, has been it's given to the Jews. So we are now talking about claiming of land. We are talking about different conflicts, and until now they have to resolve that. And again, if we talk about beliefs, I would like to go back to what Tomlinson had mentioned. Dr. Tomlinson said that we have differences, but there is a very small space for understanding. If we only get that small space of understanding and be able to dialogue with the people surrounding us, I think peace could be possible. End of conflict could be possible. But again, this is a big issue, and I cannot say I don't know if this will be ended soon.
It's literally in biblical proportions.
Yeah, that's right.
Literally, yeah. Well, the next question is from another anonymous attendee. I am interested to conduct a study on interfaith using phenomenology. If it's not too much, can I request for an elaboration of this type of method? Thank you. That's the
Okay.
question.
Thank you so much. For phenomenology, no, you usually, in my experience, we have to really go to that specific um, um, area. No, let's say when we do the Dungao, or we conducted the study on Dungao, we have to interview specific persons who are actually practicing Dungao. Dungao is a religious expression. This is a Catholic expression where the image of the saints are placed in front of the door or in front of the window, because people believe that they will be spared um, from the disease, from COVID-19. Okay, and there are steps that we have to make. No, when we interview them, we try to analyze their answers, and we did several analyses of the text. Okay, and after looking at the main theme, we dissect that, and we tabulate them. We made a concrete analysis of that. Now, if, for example, you need the specific um, guidelines, or maybe the steps, in developing that, I would be very happy to share with you my materials. I will be forwarding it to Dr. Ernie, and I think Dr. Ernie can forward it to you. And of course, now I'm also very open for collaboration. So for those who are um, um, interested to collaborate, let's try to talk maybe some other time after this. You just email me, and then I'll be very happy to entertain several meetings, and let's talk about research collaboration.
The next one is again from Mr. Percelindo Dingding. Who usually presides in interfaith sessions? A Christian, INC, SDA, Catholic, Protestant, etc., or a Muslim, Maguindanao, Maranao, Tausug, etc.? Is the presiding officer elected or appointed? How long is the term of the PO?
Um, in my case, when we received a funding from Ubichea, we were the ones who are conducting we organized the interfaith forum. But there are times also that we have to go back, no? We go to our mga partners. Parang nag-ano kami, we try to have different groups. So there are different mga organizations who led those activities. So I think it depends on the initiative of the organization, whether they will be the one to lead the interfaith activity. Again, it also depends on the, of course, the funding, and then the initiatives coming from different institutions. But I think, based from my experience, what I could share with you is it's very liberating, to be in that kind of interfaith interfaith-based outreach, because you learn from one another. You tend to see the beliefs of other people, and your horizons are getting, you tend to respect other people's belief. And of course, no, you become friends in the at the end.
We have a question from Facebook from Mr. Ernesto Barbante. In my experience in interfaith dialogue with the Moro and IP, there are exclusions among young people and women in the conversation, especially in conflict settlement. How do we ensure the equal representation and the inclusivity of the interfaith method?
I think this is very interesting, no? Again, these are part of culture. This is part of certain beliefs.
And I think as maybe for some faith groups, inclusion of women and children or young people would be very, it's open, no? But again, part of being in a interreligious dialogue is trying to understand the culture, the belief of that specific faith group, and be able to respect whatever their um, ideas are. Maybe, no, in the future, once they also understand our own faith beliefs or our ideas, they will be able to open up. So I think it's really a matter of trying to understand the certain cultural, I don't know, setting of that specific community.
Okay. So we have a question in the chat box from Ms. Jane Ruby Aspirin. Here in Mindanao, we have a movement of interfaith dialogue between the tribe peoples of Mindanao. Do you have an idea how we can use grounded theory if we are to make a research of this movement?
Okay. Actually, if we will be using grounded theory, we have to really get constructs coming from that specific community. So that means you have to prepare interview questions, open-ended questions, and then coming from their own ideas, coming from their own um, mga data, you get to see what are the lived experiences or maybe the ideologies that is being practiced in the community. And then from there, you try to gain what are the theories or what are the different constructs that you can find from that community. And then maybe relate that in the general or in the more general theories that we have.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Sorry, I had some connectivity issues. We just have two more questions to go. So the first one from an anonymous attendee again uh, is with regard funding sources for this kind of research. Are there any funding sources for this, and how can we justify this kind of research as contributing to the economy?
Actually, we have tried to apply for funding thrice, no, and it has been accepted. You know? I think there are some funding organizations whose goal is actually, or their, I don't know, their goal is to really have the, what call this is their priority, the interfaith activities. So I think you have to just look for funding organizations or institutions their priority is peace building and try to apply, using whatever activity that you have in mind. But the thing is, all the activities that we are actually doing for peace building would actually help our community. I think that is a very good way to, as an objective or as a goal, that would be a good way to start with. So helping the community to live side by side and be able to understand each other, that would actually um, be beneficial for our community.
And for the last question from Anifa Alonto, from your experience, is it difficult to remain impartial or be devoid of any biases in your approach to interfaith studies when you identify with one of the religious beings studied, or is it the contrary?
Okay. So based on my experience, I always put an open mind whenever I go for interfaith dialogue. So as long as it would not parang hurt or be disrespectful, no, of my own faith tradition, um, I try to be more understanding of whatever the belief, you know, of that specific group. And I think that would be the key, no, to really being to living simultaneously, or trying to live peacefully with one another.
Thank you very much, Dr. Del Castillo. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Fides A. Del Castillo.
Thank you so much, Doc Fernie. God bless everyone.
And now we shall proceed to the last session. The last session is on getting published in top academic journals. Our speaker is a full professor of the Department of Philosophy of De La Salle University and the president of the Philosophical Association of the Philippines. So, ladies and gentlemen, without much further ado, Dr. Jeremiah Joven B. Joaquin.
Hello, thanks Ferns for the kind introduction. Thanks to MSU and DLSU Search for this wonderful activity. Let me share my screen first. Okay. Okay, so I'm JJ Joaquin from De La Salle University, and I'll discuss how to get published in top academic journals. Just a caveat, so this will be a highly opinionated guide to academic publishing. So I'll start with something from Ludwig Wittgenstein, an Austrian English philosopher, who said that a philosopher who is not taking part in discussions is like a boxer who never goes into the ring. Now, we could paraphrase Wittgenstein here and say that an academic who is not publishing in top academic journals is like a boxer who never goes into the ring with the best fighters. I think that mindset is quite unfortunate because of a fighting antagonistic attitude, but I don't think that that's right, because if you think about it, the best fighters will reap the best rewards, of course. Here's an overview of what I'll discuss. So I'll just introduce why you need to do research and publish them, and why publish in the first place, what to publish, when and where to publish, and how to get published. So these are the questions I'll be delving into in this presentation. So let's start with the introduction. Before getting into how to publish your research, I'll give you my areas of specialization in the first place. So I'm a philosopher, so I'm doing work on metaphysics, logic, and a lot of areas in philosophy. Recently, I'm also working on interdisciplinary research, specifically artificial intelligence, gender studies, psychology of reasoning, public health, and policy logic. Now, my recent outputs are as follows. My book, this year. I'm working on another book with my good friend Brian on metaphysics. I have an under review work, Philosophy and What Matters, and an ongoing project on conditional probability and the philosophy of Clarence Arseniza. My recent Scopus Index articles, well, here are some forthcoming articles. So I wrote a piece with Frank Jackson on mind, language, and morality, which will be out soon in the Journal of Consciousness Studies. Something with Hazel Biana and Sally Haslanger that will come out in Hypatia. I also wrote a poem which will come out in the Mathematical Intelligencer. Something on analytic Christology in particular, which will appear in Manuscrito. And my latest acceptance is in the History and Philosophy of Logic. This year, I published the following videos. So I have one with my good friend from UNSW, University of New South Wales, on a causal mentalist view of propositions, which came out in Organon F. Another one with Brian Garrett, my friend and supervisor at the ANU. Australian National University, which came out in Philosophia. Something on COVID-19, two articles on COVID-19, which came out in Crime, Media, and Culture and Public Health, respectively. One of my top cited articles right now is something I wrote with Fides, Dr. Fides, which has 7 Scopus citations already. The most viewed is about 271,000, which came out last year on Philippine higher education sector in the time of COVID-19. This was co-written with Hazel Biana and Mark Dacela from the philosophy department as well. So here are some top ranked Scopus Index articles. So I have a 98th percentile article, the of 10th, and a top rank in economics, 98th percentile in resources conservation and recycling. And finally, a top rank in philosophy, 90th percentile, I think, with my good friend RJ, the chair of the philosophy department on AI. Now, what's our aim here in this short talk? So the talk will be aiming to build your research creds or research credentials by helping you prepare your research projects for publication in top academic journals. Now, my strategy will be to share some of my experiences in the publication process to you here so that you learn the ropes of publishing in those top journals. So the key questions will be why publish, what to publish, written, and how. Caveat here. So what I mean by top journal, although some people might be allergic with this categorization, well, you can think about top journals in terms of its rank in the indices like Scopus, Web of Science, or the ASEAN Citation Index, or even a journal acknowledged by experts in the field. So either classifications would do, characterizations would do for our purposes. So why publish? So here's the main drive. What's your motivation to publish? Perhaps some of you might have the following reasons: to fulfill an academic requirement, to get a degree, to get tenure, promoted, or to showcase your superior intellect. Now, except for the last one, perhaps these are good motivations to publish your manuscripts, publish your research. However, here's a suggested mindset for you guys to think about. So what I want to share with you is my mantra in thinking about publishing whatever I'm writing. So it's to effect a positive advance in the discussion of a particular issue through a well-written, well-supported, and well-reasoned research. Okay, so that's a mindset that I hope to share with you. So this is my mindset. I hope this will be your mindset all throughout. So the implications here will be, you have a well-reasoned answer to a particular issue. You have a new way of looking at the issue, or a new way of categorizing the answers to the issues, and so on and so forth. So the implication is you are making a contribution to the discussion of a given field. So this is the aim, the mindset that I hope that you have in writing your manuscripts. So what to publish? Now, here are typical submissions considered by journals. So I'll have 4 here, but there are other types of submissions. There are full papers. Typically, they are 8,000 words maximum. And the refereeing process will be blind. That means you don't know who the referee is. The referee does not know who you are. Shorts, typically 4,500 words maximum. It's also a blind refereeing process. Reviews, book notes, and so on, typically 2,000 words, will be refereed by the review editor. Communications, a maximum of 1,000 words, will be refereed by the editor, and sometimes it will be sent off to referees as well. Now, here are some tips. So when you're thinking about full papers, editors and referees expect a well-written, well-supported, well-argued, and engaging submission. Now, things to watch out for here will be, of course, you need to have a clear writing style. Your manuscripts should be free of grammatical and spelling errors. You should follow the journal's format. Uh, some journals want an extensive bibliography. And of course, you need to have a clear argument, that is support for whatever claim you're making in your manuscript. Now, an example of this kind of work is my own Prospects for Experimental Philosophical Logic, which came out in 2019, where I explored what it is to have an experimental approach in philosophical logic. So that's my take on the subject. Now, there are shorts as well, and here the editors and referees expect, aside from having a well-written, well-supported, well-argued, and engaging submission, is that you need to have a focused bibliography. Now, this is not an extensive research. It's not a full paper. You have a really narrow scope. You're targeting a particular thing in the literature or whatnot. So you need to have a focused bibliography. An example of this from my work is something I wrote, a reply article to Brian's thing in Acta Analytica, where he argued for the rationality of pure time preferences, or sorry, the irrationality of pure time preferences. So what I did here is to give counterexamples to his main argument. Now, reviews as well. So the editors expect that you have a well-written paper, well-researched, engaging submission, and of course, you need to watch out for clear writing style and, again, a focused bibliography, because you're giving a review, a book review, a book note of a particular work. So in my work, I just have one review, book review. It's published in Teaching Philosophy. It's on Brian's book, what is this thing called Metaphysics. Communications, this one is something that I just learned last year or 2 years ago. So here, it's more of writing to the editor, some position, some view that you have. So again, it's the same as the book review or the same as a short. You need to have a clear argument, a focused bibliography. So something which came out last year is a paper with Dr. Hisobiana on the ethics of scare. So we thought about COVID-19 and the Philippine fear appeals, and we looked at the ethical issues. Now, for me, there are some non-negotiables for any submitted papers. I call them the sine qua non, right? Without which not. So your paper should be clearly written, exhibit your knowledge of the literature, be well argued and well supported, and it should establish your ethos, that is your credibility as a researcher. In your paper, it should reflect that you know what you're talking about, so that when the reviewer or the editor reads it, he'll say, or she'll say, oh, this is a good one, and we could send it out to referees and so on. And of course, you need to follow your target journal's format. Okay, so where and when to submit? So these are some tips that might help you. So the first one is, where should you submit your manuscript? So I think one way of getting about to think about where to submit your manuscripts will be to look at indexes like the Web of Science, Clarivate, or SciMago, another index, the index that Scopus is using. So I'll just show you what they look like. I hope you see my screen. Okay. So here in Web of Science, you can look at the material. Okay, so you could search for a word or whatever that you want to look for, and it will give you some journal outputs. Now you could also look at SciMago, which is also a good resource in looking for journals. Okay, so if you want to look at philosophy, so I'm working in philosophy. So just click on that. So there are some journals there. Or if you have access to Scopus itself, just look into whatever subject area you want, and you'll see the journal, the available journals that you can submit to. Okay, so that's one tip. So look at the indices and search whatever subject area you want to get into. Next, of course, you need to know your target journal. If you have looked at the database or the indices, now you need to be specific. You need to know the aims and scope of the journal's provenance, the audience, the readership of the journal. I'm looking at the acceptance and rejection rate as well, and the submission process. So let's look into these details in particular. So the first one is when you look at a journal, you look at its aims and scope, meaning because this one will give you the area on which the journal is focused. Right? Next, you need to look at its prominence, its ranking, its reputation in the wider academic field, because this one will characterize the journal's standing in that field. Of course, you need to look at the audience who will read your work. Aside from that, in learning your audience, you will know the potential referees of your paper as well. And of course, for me, I'm looking at the acceptance and rejection rate because it tells you the likelihood that your paper will be accepted or rejected, which is mostly the case. And finally, the submission process will tell you how to prepare your manuscript, the refereeing process, the details about publishing once your paper gets accepted, and so on. I'll deal with this particular issue later. So here are some examples of where to look at the thing. For example, if I look at AI and society, let's click on that. I hope you're seeing my screen. So usually in a Springer journal, you'll see the aims and scope. Okay, so the journal is about this. It will give you the idea of what the journal is all about. Okay. For example, this journal is strongly not really just philosophy, not really just AI stuff. They want to have more interdisciplinary stuff going on. And they want, I think one of the things that I like about this journal is that it's for culture and communication. It's not just the technical side of AI, it's more of what are the effects of AI. So that's one. Now, when you look at something else like the Journal of Journal Studies, okay, let's click on that. So this will give you the aims and scope. So this is Routledge journal, or Taylor and Francis journal. So it will give you the aims and scope. The journal metrics will give you the acceptance rate and so on. And instructions for authors, how to submit, the submission process, and so on and so forth. So these things will be relevant to you when you are thinking about submitting your stuff in that journal. Okay. So again, let's go back there. You need to know the aims and scope of the journal's prominence, the audience, your readership, the acceptance and rejection rate, and the submission process in that journal. All right, once you check the index, your question should be, and once you have looked at the journal, you need to ask yourself, is this journal a good home for my manuscript? So you have written a good manuscript. Is this journal the right fit for my manuscript? Now, some questions about when to submit your manuscript. My technique is to check the journal's frequency. So if the journal releases monthly issues, so the best time to submit is anytime. If it is a quarterly journal, you could submit right after the previous issue. Same with triannually or biannually. Usually a journal which only releases one issue per year, there's a set deadline for submissions. And of course, the special issues also have a set deadline. Now, here are some useful correlations to think about. Top tier journals, that is, they're ranked in the top 100 of all the journals in your academic field, tend to have high rejection rates. Okay? At least 90%. So there's a 90% chance that your paper will not be accepted. But there's a quick review time. So at most 2 months. Lower tier journals, that is from 101 down to the Q4 region of the ranking, they tend to have a long review time, at least a year, but a low rejection rate, at most 50%. That is, there's a 50-50 chance that your paper will get accepted. Of course, there are exemptions to this general rule. I have one paper right now that's in a high top tier journal, but the review time took a year as well. So there are exemptions here. So how to get published? Okay. So the general process will be to prepare your manuscript, to submit your manuscript. Then after some time, you need to address the editor's or referee's decision. And finally, en route towards publication. So let's look into the details of this thing. So first, you need to prepare your manuscript. So once you have written or you have a good idea of what you want to write, you need to check the journal's format. This is a rule that many scholars, young scholars, don't know how to follow, but it's good that you use the manuscript template for the journal. Look at the language preference as well. If you're writing in English and you want to submit in English journals, English language journals, check for whether it publishes US English or a UK English. So US English will have a Z in utilize, while a UK English will be utilize with an S. You also need to look at the citation style of the journal. So for example, so most social science journals like APA, other humanities journals want use Harvard style or Chicago style or whatever style. You need to follow those things. Why? Because if your manuscript, your submitted manuscript follows them, then it shows to the editor, the reviewer, that you have done your homework. You know what they are expecting from you. Now, here are some useful aids in doing this stuff. So I'm using LaTeX. Usually, I don't use Word in my manuscripts. I use Mendeley and Zotero as part of my bibliography and citation. And Google Scholar, you could use that as well, because Google Scholar will give you the citation styles. Now, just to show this, I think, so this is a workshop type of talk. So I'll give you something like, so for example, I want to research on paraconsistent logic. So there's this book. If you click on this button, now it will give you the citation format. Okay. So I think that's useful. So if you're using Google Scholar, this is a good one. I'm using more the LaTeX type. So this is how I write my manuscripts. Okay. So a lot of coding involved, a lot of things involved here, but amounts to the same thing. Okay, let's go back. Okay, still on preparing the manuscript. So first impressions last. That is, have a witty title and read an engaging abstract. Now, why do this? Why do you need to have a good title, a witty title? Well, managing editors won't really read your whole work. What managing editors usually do is that they look at the manuscript, does it follow the format? They look at the title, they look at the abstract, and a bit of the introduction part, and they will give it to the editor. So you need to make a good impression right away. Okay? So here's an example. I've reviewed the work recently. Here's the title: An Exploration of the Postmodernist Derridean Framework as Applied to Peace Negotiations. All right, that's a good title, but a better title will be, if you revise it, is Derrida Pro Peace. It's simpler, it's direct to the point, it gives you the idea. If you answer this question yes, then your abstract will show you yes, and the argument will be there right away. All right. So tip, you need to have a good title, an easy, relatable title, and an engaging abstract to back up that title. Still, on preparing your manuscript, you need to edit without mercy. This is something I've learned through the years of writing. So I've been a researcher for almost 2 decades now. It reveals my age, but whatever. All right, so your first draft is just that. It's a first draft. Okay? So your first draft is not something that you submit right away to a journal. You need to revise your manuscript so that your non-specialist friends get your main point. Right? What I usually do is I ask my friends, "Oh, look at my manuscript. Is it any good?" Right? Or I present it in a conference and or whatnot, so that I'll get feedback right away. Then I'll edit, given the feedback and suggestions of your colleagues, your friends, and so on. Now, why do this? Well, because referees hate poorly written manuscript. However good your idea may be, if it's not well articulated, it will remain as an idea inside your head. So write clearly, direct to the point. You need to say what you mean what you say right away in the manuscript. So here's a challenge for you. Look at the top papers in your target journal. Top papers usually are the highest rank or most cited or most read articles in a given journal. So, and take note how the authors present their ideas in those papers. It will really help you hone your skills in editing and writing your manuscripts. Another tip will be to get to know your journal submission portal. A lot of newbies in research will have a hard time in maneuvering and figuring out what to do with Scholar One, editorial manager, or even an email submission. But these are some of the avenues where you submit your the submission portals of journals. Why do this? Of course, you need to learn that you don't want your manuscript to go somewhere else. For example, I'll just show you this one. So here's a currently reviewed. So I'm working on my revision to this article. Okay, so this is an example of an editorial manager. Okay, it's for the Journal of Logic, Language, and Information, one of the top journals. So if you look at the mechanics here, I hope I'm not lagging. Okay, so here's the process. You need to click on this, submit new manuscript. If you click on that, it will ask you what manuscript it is and so on and so forth. Okay, I'll just go somewhere else. I'll go back. Okay. Now here's an example of a manuscript central. So that's editorial manager is usually Springer type publications. Scholar One is used by a lot of Routledge journals. So for example, here's the Australasian Journal of Logic. So it has a different interface. Okay, so you're looking at my major division. Never mind. Sorry, you're seeing my work. Yeah, but those are different submission portals. Okay, and some other journals want you to submit via email. So I'm just showing you some of the examples of submission portals. Okay, Now, other things to take note or things to check, you need to check for the permissions for use of copyrighted material. So if you're using pictures, diagrams, or whatnot, which don't belong to you, right? You need to identify those things. Of course, you need to have a cover letter as well. Some journals require publication ethics. So if you have research ethics office in your university, you need to ask permission if you're using human subjects in your research. You also have a declaration of conflict of interest. This one is useful as well because if you know someone in the editorial board, that's a conflict of interest. If you gain money from the research, that's a conflict of interest, and so on. Some journals also use credit. That is, if you have co-authors, you need to identify who wrote the thing, who did the analysis, who did the data collection, and so on. And of course, you need to have a proofread material or manuscript. Now, why do this? Well, because editors are really meticulous about these details. Right? They're very meticulous about copyrighted material, publication ethics, and so on. Okay, on to let's call it the joys and pains of publishing. So when you have submitted your material and you wait for the editor's decision, okay, there are usually five decisions. First, your manuscript is just rejected. That's too sad. Or it's rejected after review, or you'll be asked to revise and resubmit, or accept after revisions, or accept without revisions. All right, let's look into the details of these decisions and how to address them. So the first one is just reject. Your submission outright. So this is for newbies in research. This will happen to you. I guarantee that. It's a just rejected. And the manuscript was not sent out for review. That is, it did not go to the refereeing process. Outright, the managing editor or the editor himself or herself will reject the material. Why? Because it does not fit with the journal's aims and scope. It is poorly written and offers nothing new. Okay? So how to address this? I have a ton of desk rejections. So my usual way of addressing this is to rework the manuscript and submit it to another journal. Okay? Usually a desk rejection means a total overhaul of the manuscript because there's something wrong. If the editor or the managing editor did not see any merit to your submission, it means that there's something wrong with the manuscript. Okay? I have a lot of reject after review as well. So your submission here was rejected not by the editor, not by the managing editor, but by the referee. Okay, so usually if you have a rejection after review, it means that you have a good paper, it's well written, but it is ill motivated, at least as the referee sees it, or it's poorly supported, or it's poorly argued. All right, so how do you address this? Again, you have to go back to the drawing board, you have to rework the manuscript, and usually you need to submit to another journal. So that's the thing that journals are the rule of thumb. If you get rejected in that journal for that manuscript, you need to submit the manuscript somewhere else. But from my experience, a referee's rejection may be helpful to improve the manuscript. As I've said, I had a ton of referee rejections, but because they gave me the comments, I improved the material, the manuscript, and submitted it and published the manuscript somewhere else. Okay, how do you address a revise and resubmit? So a revise and resubmit is here the editor agrees with the referee or referees that there are some problems with the manuscript, either with the overall argument or the support you gave or the conclusion that you have drawn. Again, it's a good paper, it's well written, okay? But typical R&Rs, you have to rework your argument and resubmit the work in the same journal. Okay? So R&Rs, or revise and resubmit, are usually the default decisions of editors, at least some kind editors. R&R usually leads to acceptance, but recently I had one that led to rejection. So that's part of the craft. So there's another decision, and this is a good decision. So it's good for you if your manuscript was accepted after revision. That means you're almost there. The editor just needs you to address some minor or major issues with the manuscript. Typically, these issues are with citation style, spelling, grammar, so, or a little reworking of the argument, or the phrasing of the, the argument, or the motivation of the issue, and so on. So how do you address this one? You need to proofread your work, check for grammatical lapses, and adhere to the journal's format. I have a ton of conditional acceptances, so that's my experience, and patience and a keen eye for errors are really needed here. And finally, when you get accepted, when your manuscript is accepted without revisions, which is very rare, how do you address this? Well, nothing really. You just need to wait for the article's proofs. That is the preprint of your material. And I'll say that getting an outright acceptance is one of the best things you'll experience as an academic. I had a few of this kind of this editor's decision. So once you get accepted, once your manuscript gets accepted, it's en route to publication. So here are some things that you have to keep in mind. You need to check the proofs of your manuscript, secure your copyright, of course, and share your published output. Now, proofs will be, the editor will send you a preprint or proof of your article. So here, notify the editor for any errors that you'll see in the manuscript, because usually this is the last time that you'll see your manuscript before it gets published. Once you have accepted the article's proofs, you'll have no chance to make changes. So scrutinize the proofs. Usually, the thing that you need to look at are the spacing, the punctuation marks, the spellings, and so on and so forth. Now, checking proofs is really painstaking because you need to have a keen eye of the mistakes in the preprint. That is the thing that will appear in the journal itself. But it's all worth it when it gets published, when you see your hard work out there concretely manifested for everyone to see. One important thing as well is to secure your copyright. You need to own your work, of course, because that's your product. That's your intellectual product. So most journals will ask you to sign a copyright form. So read it carefully and make sure that you own the copyright of your article. Why is this important? Well, copyrighted work secures your intellectual property rights. That is, you could use this for your if you want to create a book out of the collected essays that you have published over the years, you could have that because you own your copyright. Another thing is that you could sue someone for plagiarism, but usually academics don't do that, although it's a no-no, right? Etc. And for me, from my experience, I use my published outputs in my classes. I use them as resource material or secondary literature and discussion. Excuse me. And finally, you need to share your work. Of course, your mindset should be your published work is a contribution to the existing body of knowledge. You need to share it. This is important. So, because your work continues the discussion in your chosen area. That is, here's Plato, here's Aristotle, here's so and so and so, and there's you. You're continuing the discussion, so you need to share those things to other people so that they too could contribute in the body of knowledge the growing body of knowledge. Now, from my experience, citations are one thing. So if you get your work gets cited, ooh, hooray! But having your work impacting people's lives, well, that's another thing. For example, if your paper was used to do some policy, or it converted some big theory into some other thing, then that's a good thing as an academic because your work has tremendous impact in the discipline and people's lives. Now, here's a work stat or strategy that I hope to share with you, and I hope that you will get as well in in doing your work, in starting your academic careers, if you're into or you're getting into academic um, jobs and so on. So if you want to really be a researcher and publish a lot of material, you need to find an issue to work on and the literature that surrounds it. Think of how you could contribute to that literature. Write down your thoughts on the matter. Of course, you need to have notes. Write down your manuscript as well. Look for a suitable journal and submit your paper there. Wait for the editor's decision and respond accordingly. Then repeat the process because, well, being a researcher, being an academic does not end with one publication. It's a continuous research publication arena. Just a summary. So in this talk, I just gave you, the do's and don'ts of how to get published in top academic journals. I gave you an introduction of how to build your research credential, why you should publish, what to publish, where and when to publish, and how to get published. Now it's your turn, and thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joaquin. We have multiple requests for a copy of your presentation. Will you be sharing a copy?
Yes, of course. I'll send it to you, friends.
Okay, thank you. And now for the questions. There's one here from an anonymous attendee. Are there updates regarding Professor Beale's list of predatory journals and conferences?
Yeah, there's a recent update of this one. I think last year, some predatory journals were, well, are now designated as not predatory. Some well-known journals are now predatory. But I think what you need to look out for is not the predatory nature, but the scholar, um, how scholars think about the journal. I think that's the best way of looking at it. And sometimes, here's some tidbits about the disciplines. Most journals that are classified as predatory are asking for money. Now, here's the truth about this practice. Some highly cited top ranked journals are asking for payment because if you want your paper to be open access, that is, there's no paywall in your research, your published work, then you need to give them money. So that's the thing. But some other journals, like I don't want to name names, but a lot of journals in India, Pakistan, sorry for those who publish there, those are not goodish journals because not everyone will cite these journals. They have no real leadership in the academic scene. Thanks also.
There's another question. And well, basically, which areas of the social sciences, I think we can include the humanities in the Philippines. So which areas lack more publications?
Okay, that's a very good question. So social sciences, they're well represented in a lot of top journals. Filipino scholars, Filipino social scientists, political scientists, historians, like Fernie, are publishing are well represented in the international academic world. But some other areas, like typically those are localized knowledge, like Filipino, like Visaya studies, Pampangenia studies, and so on. Kapampangan studies, and so on and so forth. Those are some areas that are not represented internationally, unfortunately. Now, locally, we have strong publications in what? Political science, of course, psychology, what else? Bit of literature, a lot of communication arts, and so on in the humanities side. And now, of course, theology, religious studies, philosophy are all getting there as well.
There's a question from Mr. Jeric Alico. And but basically, what's your opinion about some Nobel laureates' idea about publication? They said it's not about the impact factor, it's about the paper.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. So when we talk about impact factor, there's a distinction that you need to make between the so-called uh, H index, which is really about here are my total publications, here are the things that are cited by people on my publication. So that's the ratio, I think. Total number of citations over the total number of publications over time. That's the H index. I agree that some people are fixated with that index, that impact factor. But there are some other measures of impact. Like citations are one thing, but if that paper revolutionizes a given field, I could give you an example. So there's this guy in the 1960s, philosopher, who came up with a two-page article which changed the landscape of philosophy of knowledge. And that's the only published work he had. So that's a 1960s article. He recently died. His name is Edmund Gettier. Yeah, so he made an impact just with one article. Okay, it changed the landscape of a given field. But of course, those are really the outliers in the in the field. For us, the ordinary people, ordinary researchers, what we're looking for is or will be a kind of little contribution to your specified field. For example, me, I'm working on a lot of logic right now, logic stuff, and I'm looking at particular issues in a particular logic under this particular subdiscipline. So if I made some impact there, it means that, well, people know that I'm working on that, that I'll be asked to referee a paper on that particular topic because now you are acknowledged as an expert, you have made an impact in discipline and so on and so forth. So right, you need to establish your creds, your research credential, not look for notwithstanding the number of publications you have. Of course, the more publications you have, the more, promotions you get, and so on. But that's not the real point. Your aim should be to contribute in the little field that you want to be involved in. Thanks for that question.
And another one from an anonymous attendee. Do you recommend that that intellectual property be secured before submitting a paper for publication, or publish first before securing IP?
Okay, so we need to make a distinction between IPs, right? IPs, intellectual properties, intellectual property forms given by the journals, and the intellectual property that you have. Okay, here's the idea. So as an author, as a researcher, you wrote a manuscript. So that manuscript is technically yours. The idea of that, the formation of that, that's yours. That's your intellectual property. But to secure that, you need to publish the material. I remember there's a debate between Newton and Leibniz of who first created the calculus, right? So the debate is who had the idea first. It turns out that Newton had the idea first, but the first guy who published was Leibniz. So that's a whole debate out there. But the thing is, the intellectual property is usually given once you get the material published. And that's why the forms will be there. But if you want to secure some portions of your material, then you need to go to the National Library and apply for copyright. Or if it's a trademark, you need to go to DTI, I think. If it is what's that, a patent, you need to go to the patent office to secure your intellectual property rights. Okay? But that's very important. You need to own your work. I hope I answered the question.
I think it did. There's one more question, but I don't know if this is within your realm of knowledge. Do you have any comments on how our government funds various research proposals? Are they research contributing to our economy?
Okay. I stopped personally. I know that this is being recorded, it's being broadcast on Facebook. Personally, I stopped applying for government funding because, yes, that's right. The government targets research that could be applied. There's some, I think, the sustainability goals and so on. So, for example, a research on the logic of nonsense would not get funding from the government. So that's quite unfortunate. But there are other grant-giving bodies that you could look into. So one will be like international philosophy societies, which give grants if you're into philosophy. Fides mentioned about peace studies. Okay, if you're into peace studies, you need to look for some private funding as well if you're into that research track, if you want to get funding. For one, this is a plug for DLSU University because DLSU University is very generous with research grants for DLSU faculty or some researcher with a partner in DLSU. Okay, so I think if your institution like MSU is really serious in upping your research outputs and really making an impact and contributing to many different fields, you need to have or you need to establish a kind of research grant going on. Something like LaSalle is doing right now. Thanks. Sorry for the plug.
Okay, so we have another question, but I'll keep the person anonymous. He's asking for some tips. I had my dissertation in the year 2000. It was promised some funding, but then later the funding was given to somebody else. Now my worry is some of the references I used in my dissertation are now 20 years old. What should I do?
What do you want? Do you want to get published or you want to get grants? If you want to get published and get grants, you need to update your material. I'm not sure if you have finished your PhD or you have defended your dissertation, but if you have or you did, you could chop it down into bits. Okay, each chapter will be a publishable material. Send it out for review somewhere and look for funding. I think that's the best. But you need to update because 20 years is will be a gap in the literature, especially in some fields. If you're into social sciences, just 5 years, your 5-year gap in the literature will be has enormous consequence in your research output. In philosophy, in some parts of philosophy, that's negligible, especially if you're doing ancient philosophy, for example, your literature is 2,000 years old, that's all right. But if you're into new types of like philosophical logic, so the literature there is fast-paced, you need to catch up. If you're losing 2 years of literature, then your work would not stand the scrutiny of review, unfortunately. So you need to update your literature. That's my tip if it's 20 years old.
Next question from Margarita Paghasian. How can I avoid non-accredited publications? I might end up with a money-making publication.
Okay, so here is where the indexes work. Okay, so look at the journal. Oh, by the way, here's another tip for the newbies there, or the young scholars that we have here. If you receive an email asking you to submit an article, you are a tremendous scholar, they want to publish you, definitely or most likely, it's a predatory journal, predatory publication. So it's a big no-no. If someone is asking you to publish with them and to pay some money, that's a no-no. Okay? Editors don't do that. Top journals don't do that. You need to submit to them. Unless you are the prolific Nobel Prize winner or Fields medalist or whatever, they'll ask for you to publish with them. If you're not at that caliber, don't. Okay, so that's one thing. So that's already half of it. So don't engage in those schemes, because personally, I receive about 50 emails per week regarding my submit to their journals. Okay, so that's a no-no. Another thing is that check the journal itself. Right? It's easy to check whether the journal is in top institution or a good publisher. Okay, so you need to check. You need to do your homework. Google them. There's Google anyway, so you could search the journal. You can search the editor. Is this guy uh, known in the field, and so on and so forth. That would stop this kind of predatory practice. Good question.
Okay, we have just one last question, and it's a practical question actually. How do we secure our copyright? It's
Okay.
from Muammar Katwal.
Oh wait, I could show you an example of how that works. Can I share my screen? Teka lang, wait. I'll just plug in my password. Okay. See, I'll share my screen. Come on. Sorry, I think my internet's not that fast. So this is okay. Where's that? Download. Sorry, I share my desktop. Okay, when your paper gets accepted, you'll receive a kind of publishing agreement, something like this. Okay, so a publishing agreement is undertaken, and so on and so forth. It will assign a copyright in your article. Okay, so it will give you. That's why you need to read this stuff. Okay, who owns the paper? Okay, the conditions by which you do the thing in the paper and so on. You need to read these things very carefully. So once you get accepted, once your manuscript gets accepted, if it is a quality journal, it's a journal by some big publisher, they'll give you this one outright. Now, why do you need this? I'll tell you the thing. Okay, there's a website concerned about copyright. Okay? Because you need to ask permission to get whatever article, even your own article, you need to ask permission to publish it. If you own the copyright, the permission will be given outright. They'll just say, it's your article anyway, so we'll permit you to reprint it, use it somewhere, and so on. So how do you get the copyright? If your paper gets accepted, automatically a publisher or the editor will give you a publishing agreement, something like this. Okay? Once you get this one, sign it, give it to them, and you'll own the copyright right away. Then once you have that, once you get into, for example, wait lang. Okay, if you want to get your work, this is marketplace copyright. So I'll just search my name. So for example, I want to get this one. Diba? I want to request permission to use it or to reprint it. If you don't own the copyright, I'll just show it to you. Sorry, it's taking some time. So if you want to, for example, you want to distribute this commercially or photocopy it or whatever, or let's just use the distribute function. And let's say this was published in, I forget, 2019. Let's say I'll ask for one copy. The total number of pages will be, I think it's 12 pages. Add to cart. Okay, it will ask you 19. I don't know if you see this. Let's do the, sorry, 19, almost 20 AUD, Australian dollars. Okay, for your own paper. Okay. But if you own the copyright, you don't need to pay for reuse of this material. So that's the thing. That's one useful thing. That's why you need to own your work. And of course, you could cite your work and so on and so forth. Hi, thanks.
Sorry, I said that was the last question, but I missed some raised hands. So I hope you don't mind.
Okay.
Well, Miss Arlene Traspe has a raised hand. Do you have a question, Ms. Traspe? Oh, the hand is taken down. Miss Anifa Alonto has a raised hand. Ms. Alonto?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Pleasant afternoon to everyone. Yes, I'm Anifa from MSU, and actually you alluded to this already, but I want a specific answer to it. Like, how challenging can having the means or finances be in getting published, especially for international journals? And from your knowledge, what is the average cost for an international publication? And if you can share what has been the most cost-effective and most expensive from your experience.
Oh, very good. So I have not spent any money in any of my publications so far. Okay, because I don't publish in journals which ask for money. So that's a good thing. So I don't have an experience of a journal asking me for money, quite unfortunately. Now, where do you get the money to do your research? Well, that's a thing. It depends on the research program that you have or the research project that you have. If you're into fieldwork, you need some money to finance your thing. So you could ask the university if you have research grants, or you could ask, you could apply for grants elsewhere. Okay, so that's another venue for funding your research. For me, fortunately, I'm doing research from an armchair, so I could bring my research wherever I am. I don't need to go to the field. I don't need to go to the archives. I just need my computer, my head, and coffee and some smokes to do my thing. Sorry, yeah, kidding aside, that's the reality here. I'm not sure about your field, but if you're working on the humanities, NCCA is giving some grants. SHED is also giving some grants. DOST as well, if you're into the sciences. So there are a lot of funding opportunities for you. Regarding the publication itself, for me, I have not experienced paying for anything so that my paper will be published. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any parting words?
Yeah, so for the young guys here, young people who want to get into research, who want to get to academic scholarship, yeah, kudos and join in the discussion. And of course, don't forget that you're making waves. To make waves, you're researching, you're not publishing for the sake of publishing and researching, but you want to contribute to the body of knowledge that you are into. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jeremiah Joven B. Joaquin. And that is the end of the webinar. At this point, we shall proceed to the closing ceremony with just a few closing remarks. I understand that Dean Tabanao will deliver the closing remarks on behalf of MSU. Dean Tabanao. We seem to be having some, oh, there we go.
Hello.
We can hear you now, ma'am.
Okay. So much knowledge. Maganda ang naging exchanges. Lalo na yung mga speakers natin, Dr. Santiago. And we are all inspired and encouraged to continue with this collaboration. And I would like to thank all the people who helped us, who supported, who joined. And in behalf of the Mindanao State University, I really would like to thank you and looking forward to more engagements such as this. So sa lahat po ng mga nag-continue until this day, maraming salamat. Maraming salamat sa DLSU, sa research, and to all my colleagues and the members of our research team sa college. And of course, the MSU and the De La Salle had made it very successful. Magandang hapon sa ating lahat.
Maraming salamat po, Dean Tabanao. Now, on behalf of the Southeast Asia Research Center and Hub of De La Salle University, I'd like to thank you all for spending the past 2 days with us. I hope that this webinar has been a worthwhile experience and that it encourages everyone to engage in more scholarly research and publication. I also look forward to our future collaborations between De La Salle University and the Mindanao State University System. Special thanks to Attorney Renato S. Pacaldo, Executive Director of the International Affairs and Linkages Office, Dean Elena Tabanao, Assistant Director Ayash Alonto, and of course, Professor Jeric Alico, all of MSU, for all your efforts and hard work. To all our speakers from La Salle, to all the administration, faculty, students, and guests from both universities. By the way, special mention also to the Office of the Vice President for La Salle and Mission, who funded this activity. So again, we are sincerely grateful, and we wish you all a pleasant afternoon. Stay safe, everyone. Bye.